Mesachta Horayos, Daf Hey Amud Aleph. We're starting from the last Mishnah, around 6 lines at the bottom of Dalar Amud Beis. Zakti Mishnah Hey Bezdin. If Bezdin made a erroneous psak, we also call Akol, and all the 12 Shvatim followed suit. Ayruban. Most of each Shevet made a mistake. Alpian, according to the Bezdin, Meviim Par. Then the Bezdin brings a par and not the call. If the Bezdin made a erroneous psak and Avidazara like we had before, that they said bowing to it is mutter, then Bezdin mevi a par v'soid. The Bezdin brings a par v'soid for Avidazara not the call, and these are the words Divrei Rav. Those are the words of Rav. Rabbi Yehuda argues. He says Shnei Masa Shvatim, that the 12 Shvatim that listened to the erroneous psak of Bezdin and followed suit. So, Meviim Shneim Asa Ponim. Each Shevet brings a par, Helam Dover Shal Tzibah, not the Bezdin. If the Bezdin made a erroneous psak in Avodah Zarah, and they were matter prat in Avodah Zarah, like bowing, Meviim, the Shvatim bring Shneim Asa Ponim and Shnei Asa Sinim. Every Shevet brings a par v'soyer, but not the Bezdin. Zog the Mishnah, third Pshita, Reb Shimon argues, every Shevet, there's 13 parim. Every Shevet brings one par. And in addition, Bezdin also, if they were over, according to Heidas, Bezdin, erroneous psak when they gave to idols that they said you're allowed to bow to an idol, and they followed suit. Shleisha asa parim. They bring 13 parim. Shleisha asa siyum, meaning par v'soyer l'chol shevet v'shevet. Every shevet brought a par v'soyer, and so did Bezdin. That's why it's 13. V'chein par v'soyer l'Bezdin. Heidu Bezdin passing the erroneous psak. We also shvatim ayruban. Or 7 Shvatim followed, so it's a Reiv Shvatim, or a Reiv of every one of the 7 Shvatim followed Al Pihem Meviim Par. Reiv over here means not Reiv of Klal Yisrael, it means a Reiv of each Shevet sin. So Bezdin brings a par Helam Shaldava, par Helam Dava Shal Tzibor. And if there was a erroneous psak when they gave to worshipping idols, maybe in parvisoyer, they bring the Bezdin brings a parvisoyer lechatas. That's the words of Rav. The Rav Meir holds only Bezdin brings the cup, not the tzibur. Rabbi Yehuda argues, 7 shvatim that sin, they bring 7 parim. And those are the rest of the remainder Shvatim that didn't sin, Mavim Ayadayim, bring because of the Shvatim that did sin. What did they bring? Par, Helem, Dava, every Shevet brings that. Sha'af El Shalei Chatam Mavim, even those that didn't sin have to bring the carbon Ayadayim Chaitim because of the Chaitim. So every one of the 12 Shvatim have to bring a par, not Bezdin. So B'Sachakal is 12 parim. And even only if miut of the Shvatim didn't sin, they also have to bring. Shimon argues, Aimai says, Shmeina Parim, a par, Echad L'chol Shevet, an additional par for Bezdin. That's why it's 8. And if they made a erroneous psak for worshipping idols, Shmeina Parim, Shmeina Sidim. It's 7 Parim Usidim for the Shevet, L'chol Shevet, the Shevet, par v'sol L'chol Shevet, the Shevet. So par v'soy for every shevet, that's why that's is 7. And how do we get to 8? Because par v'soy Bezdin, because the Bezdin also brought a par v'soy. And he argues that the rest of the Shvatim who didn't sin don't bring. Only the Shvatim that sin. Okay, that's Reb Shimon. If the Bezdin Hagadol, it made a erroneous psak. I'm sorry, Hayu Bezdin Shal Achman Shvatim. If the Bezdin of one of the Shvatim had made a erroneous psak, that Al Piyam, that Shevet made a mistake followed them and did the Aveda based on their Sanhedrin, Oisa Shevet Chayiv. That Shevet is Chayiv, Apar Helam Dava, Shah Kol HaShvatim Turim. But the rest of the Shvatim are Potter. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, those are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Chameimim, Chacham argue, Ein Chayavim Karmel Al Horayos Shel Beis Din HaGadol B'Vad. Only of the Sanhedrin Hagdoila, not if it was the Beis Din HaGadol of that Shevet. That's not enough. The only time that there'll be Chayiv, if it's only not the Beis Din HaGadol of the Shevet, but the Sanhedrin Hagdoila of the 71 that sat in the Lishkis Hagazes by the Harabayas, that's when there will be Chayiv a carbon. Shaneva, like it says by Helam David Shal Tzibur, even Kol Adas Yisrael Yishgu, meaning the Sanhedrin Hagdoila of all Yidden will make a mistake in their psak. V'loi Adas Oisei Shevet, and not the Beis Din HaGadol of that Shevet. And if they talk away on the Beis Din HaGadol of that Shevet, whether that Shevet or whether other Shvatim, they have a din like Yechidim, and each one has to bring a kivsa and a seira for a chatas. So that Gemara tell that if Beis Din paskin to be mated of a asur, and the kol followed the psak, and at that time the kol was over another isur, so there were two isurim, let's say dam, that they ate chelav and dam, but one of the two, Beis Din made a erroneous psak. Maybe they said about the isur chelav that you're allowed to eat it, or about the isur dam. So, but one of them, for sure, was based on a erroneous psak, and the people ate both. Yoda shahedu. Now it became aware that Beis Din made a mistake. They told only they forgot which one was the one that they gave a erroneous psak. Was it on the dam or was it on the chelav? I would have thought that there'll be chayiv par helam shel tzibur because the people did an aveda, one of them for sure based on the psak of Beis Din. Talmud Leiman, therefore the pasuk says, to teach us, they bring a pal helem only dafke when they know which chet they paskin erroneously. Not in a case where only the sinners know. Okay, meaning not only in a case where we know from the sinners that they sin, they don't know which sin was the one based on the psak, then they don't bring a par helem davar. The Brisa continues the dash in the pasuk. It says, so the words asher chatu alehom l'cheda extra because it says already v'nei da'achatos. What do you have to say asher chatu aleh? So what does he come to teach us? To teach us that all those that sin are makav apar, and the amount of aparim they bring is according to the chaytim, meaning im chatu shnei shvatim. If two shvatim sin, mevim shnei parim, then they bring two par helam shel davar. If chatu shleisha, if three shvatim sin, mevim shleisha, then they bring, each shevet brings a par helam for his shevet. Or perhaps we'll say the pasuk, he's not referring to shvatim, he's referring to single people. And they did a sin. If it's two single people, they bring two parim. If three sin, three yichidim sin. Talmud Leimer comes the pasuk and says, "V'kiba hakol." When it says the word kol, hakol chayiv to be a par helam dava is for the sin is only if it's v'kol hakol v'kol chayiv, meaning every shevet is going to be chayiv par halam dava if they atzmei. The words asher chatu aleh teaches us every kol, meaning every shevet. That but not yichidim. Yichidim do not bring a par halam dava. Ketzah says the Gemara, he explains what does the brayso mean. Chatu shnei shvatim. If two shvatim had sinned, meviyim shnei parim, they bring a par halam dava for each shevet. Chatu shiva shvatim. If 7 shvatim sin, meviyim shiva parim. They bring a par helam for each shevet of the 7. Usha Shvatim Shalei Chata, and the remainder of the Shvatim that did not sin, Mevim Ayadayim, are brought through the 7 Shvatim that sinned, for each Shevet, because even these Shvatim who did not sin bring a Pahalam Dava, through the sinners, Lakach Nama Kol. That's why it says the word Kol in the puzzle, Lechayev, to be Mechayev, a separate par, a Kol V'Kol, for each Shevet. Every Shevet is considered a Kol on its own. Even the Shvatim that didn't sin are fashlept after the Shvatim that did sin, and they are also Chayev. Every Shevet is Chayev. Div Rabbi Yehuda, those are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Reb Shimon says, Shiva Shvatim, Shechatim Avim Shviva Parim. 7 Shvatim that sin, they bring 7 Parim. In addition, Bezdin Avim Ayudeim Par. And Bezdin, in addition to the 7, brings also a par for themselves. This we learn out from Exer Shavush. Never Lamata by Akrovas Apar, it says Kol. We keep a Kol Pa Ben Bakal Lechatas. And never Lamaila by the erroneous Psak of Bezdin, it says also the word Kol. It says Nelam Dov Meinei Kol. So Ma, just like Legabe, the Kol Ab Lamaila, where it says Benegeit HaKrova is Bezdin Im HaKol. It's the word, it says Einei, that means Bezdin. Ein is referring to the Bezdin. I'm saying just like the call that says by Me'ena Kol, which is referring to Bezdin. Bezdin brings with the call is referring to the Bezdin with the call. So too the call which says by the Hakrava, Bezdin and Makol are makiv, meaning Bezdin in addition to the call is makiv another carbon. Meir argues, if 7 Shvatim sin, Bezdin brings the par helam, shol zibo. But the Shvatim themselves, Pturim, are part from bringing a par. And we learn out from Exer Shavah Kol, never Kol Lamata by Yaakov's par. We never Kol Lamaila by the erroneous Psaka Bezdin. Ma Kol Lamaila, Bezdin, V'lo Yitzibur, just like the call that says Lamailam by Pahelam Shatzibur, it says, meaning by the Makol Lamailam, I'm sorry, the call that says Lamaila by Ayraz Bezdin is a Bezdin, Layala Tzibur is going on Bezdin, not the Tzibur. Eini HaKol is the Bezdin, and they bring it Avkol Hamlamata. It's only meaning referring the pasuk is talking about the Hayra was totally only in Bezdin Avkol Hamlamata. So too by the call that says Lamata Bezdin the teachers only Bezdin Achayim to be a makber, not the tzibur. Reb Shimon ben Elazar, the Braisa brings Hayra. Reb Shimon ben Elazar Mishmei. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says from the name of Rabbi Meir, if 6 Shvatim had sinned, and they are the majority of the call. Or 7 Shvatim sinned, and even though they're not the Rev of the call, Mevim par, they bring a par Helam Shal Tzibah, meaning Rev Tzibah Lagabi Chiv par Helam Dava is measured either according to the Rev of the Shvatim or according to the Rev of Anshe Yisrael. Omamar, we learned in the Braisa that if Bezdin was matter a prat and a iser, like iser chaylev, and they call 8 chaylev vedam, and they forgot which of the 2 isurim were the ones that Bezdin make the erroneous psak that you're allowed to eat. The pasuk teaches us that you don't bring a par halam dava only when you know exactly what was this erroneous psak, which Isa were they matter. In fact, Yomar Tana, who's the Tana that holds this? And the Yomar Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, he came Rava. Now you understand the name of Rav, others say it's Rava. The like Rav Lezer, this Tana does not follow Rav Lezer that the psak that they have to know exactly which sin. Meaning that even though if he does know exactly which sin, then he wouldn't bring a carbon. Where do we see it doesn't follow Rabbi Lezer? The time that we learned to Rabbi Lezer, Manavshach. that he's over on the Isser of Chiyuv Chatas. There it's referring to the Isser of Noisa and the Isser of Chelev. So Manav he says, I Chelev Achal, Rabbi Elazar says, he has to bring it regardless of Paralim Dava. Because if he ate Chelev, he's Chayv Chatas on eating Chelev. Even Noisa Achal, he's Chayv for eating Noisa. So to an Al-Braisa, we don't know which Isser the best possibly erroneously. According to Rabbi Elazar, you could say Manav if they pass him in the gate to Chelev, the Chayv Paralim Dava. And if they pass him in the gate to Dam, the Chayv Paralim Shal Dava. So, and since Albert Isa says you don't bring a Paralim Shal Dava, it's Behech, it doesn't go according to Rabbi Elazar. So Ravashi slugs up this Raya. Ravashi Amafilu Tem Rabbi Elazar. You could even say that Tana Rabbi says according to Rabbi Elazar, Shani Hacha, here it's different than Din Chatos. The Chsiv by Paralim Dava, it says when they da Chatos Asher Chotu Allah by Chatos, it says Befedish Allah. It's mashma, you have to know what the sin is. Frankly, but really, that's it. I also not mixif there too by I heard I love chatas asher chataba, where Rabbi Elazar said you don't have to know which chet. It says asher chataba the chayra ba should mean that you have to know the chet. Says the Gemara there. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Elazar needed it for different limud the ba prat lemisasik to tell us that a person is chayv chatas only when he doesn't be kavanah. But what's if his kavanah was to pick up something that was tolush and it was mechuba, and he picked up something that was mechuba, that he's going to be potter, prat l'misasing, it wasn't kavanah, that he's not going to be chayv. That's what he needed Bob for. But otherwise, the halacha would be that you wouldn't have to know, or dafke by chatz where it says Allah, there you have to know exactly which chet it is. That's why it's different than his case, where im chelev achal, im noisa achal, that's different than the case of that where they made a erroneous psak. They have to know exactly which psak because it says Allah, a special gzeira, gzeira sakosav. In fact, you my time to Rabbi Yehuda. What's the reason of Rabbi Yehuda? It says 4 mentions of kahal. Really, it says 2. But how do you get 2 more? Because in the pasuk it says. In the Pesukim it mentions like this: "V'hikrivu hakol pa'ben b'akal lechatz." Okay, where's the words? So we learn out from v'hikrivu hakol. It could have said. It could have said, let's start from first. It says twice call. What's the twice that it says call? It says, V'nelam dav meine ha-kol. And then it says, V'as mitzvah Hashem. Hashem lo yasin v'Hashem. And then Hashem ikiva ha-kol again. So you have call twice. Then what's the third time? Third time is me'ene ha-kol. Is mashma, it's an extra word. Because it could have said me'ene kol, and instead it says with the extra hey, so that's a third call. And the fourth call is from this that the pasuk could have written ve'kivu kol, and he wrote ve'kivu hakol, so that's a fourth one. So what are the 4 calls coming to teach us? Chad l'chayv hakol kol, that every shevet is going to be chayv apar on its own. V'chad, and another call l'heidah tluy bezdin. It's the par is based on the erroneous psak of Bezdin, and the Maisa Isa that was done is totally b'kol, that the Maisa has to be done by the kol. That's 2. B'chad l'greira. One is to tell us that the Shvatim that didn't, the remaining Shvatim that didn't sin, even though they didn't sin, they're chayv to bring a par helam davar. And b'chad l'shevet shas beiraz Bezdin. And one is to tell you that the one shevet that did a isa, according to the psak of their bezdin, that they bring a par, like Rabbi Yehuda had said at the end of the Mishnah. Rabbi Shimon, what's his reasoning? He says it's only 3. Hakol, That's in the second pasuk. V'yikiva hakol are two haskaris, and the hakol that we said that it says that me'ene hakol, and it could have said kol. He says no. Me'ene hakol orchid krohu. This that it says me'ene with a hey hakol is the derech for the pasuk to right. K'diyamin sheme'ene the planet, like the eyes of that person, the eyes of the kol shel hakol. That's what he meant to say me'ene hakol. So it's not extra. It's the way of speaking. So you only have three calls. And chad, one call is lechayev, kol v'kol. Tell you every shevet is chayev to bring its own par helam dava. Utrei achrina, and the other two call never lamata. So we learn it out as exeda shava, the last two. It says by a kavas par or call, and it says veikivu, meaning veikivu akol. It says by a kavas par. But never lamayla by erroneous psaka bezdin. It says called me'ene akol. Mal halan, just like by the Heidas Bezdin, the pasuk says Bezdin is with the call. Bezdin imakol I've come by Yaakov's hapar. He's come to tell you Bezdin imakol that the two haskaras of kol is needed for the Gzeir Shabbat, to tell you that even Bezdin are chayovim to bring a pahelam dava. Rabbi Meir, what's his reasoning? He says the only Bezdin brings it. So he says kol hakol like darish. He says the last two calls he's not dashing as if they're two extra. Hilkah, so how many calls? We have two. Hilkah take call exhibit. There's only two calls. Call. We need it for the Gzeda Shava Malahalam, just like by Heidas Bezdin, by the word Me'enei Kol. That's the Heidas Bezdin. The Kavanah is Lebezdin, V'lei Tzibur. The Kavanah is Bezdin who paskin, not the Tzibur. So Afkan, so too by Akavas HaKabim, where it says Veikiva HaKol, the Kavanah is only who brings the Kabim. Bezdin is Makiv the Par, V'lei Tzibur. Just like when it came to the Psak, it was only Bezdin, so too by the Akavah, it's only Bezdin. Reb Shimon ben Elazar, my time. Reb Shimon ben Elazar, who says the name of Rabbi, what's his reasoning? He says, Ksiv, it says by the Shikha Seida Avavai Desarava, Yeme'ene Ha'idenas, Velishgaga, Alma Miyutas, from which we learn out of Miyut, that even only if a Miyut of Klal Yisrael had sinned, they bring a carbon sibur. The chsiv me'enai, that means from the kohol, a part of the kohol, not kol enei kol. It says me'enai. It means a part of the kohol, even if it's a miyut. Uksiv, and next to that it says kilachol hamishgaga. Lememre deruba in miyut aloi. This passage is teaching us only when the reivaham, when it's reivaham, that's called kolaham. Because Ruba is Kekule. If they were Vishoigeg, then the Chayam come. But not only when a Mirdam is over Vishoigeg. So you have two psukim that contradict. You have Kolam, it says in the Pasik, it says in the Pasik, L'chol ha'am mishgaga. So, which is mashma, that only Kol ha'am, and which is Rubi Kikulei, and then you have the pasuk Mayene, which sounds like even a miyut. According to the first pasuk, even a miyut is chayv v'karbon. According to the second pasuk, only Reiv is chayv. Okay, so how do we answer this thing? And the Gemara also shisha, if 6 of the shvatim did an aveira, al pi Heidas Bezdin Rabbi Shalakon, they are the majority of the call. Oy Shiva or 7 Shvatim did it Alpha Pishin and Rubshal Kol, even though they're not the majority of the Kol, Chayavim, but they're the majority of the Shvatim, the Chayav in the carbon of Shoygeg. That's a Hayim, and that's some of the Shkogas, Mechayiv, even the Miyut HaKol carbon is talking about that this Miyut was the Reiv Shvatim. And the Pasuk Chol HaMishkoga, that's Mechayiv, only if there's Reiv HaKol, is referring to, even though it's only 6 Shvatim, that's not the Reiv of the Shvatim. Who dashin the coal for Gzeda Shava, and Rabbi Shimon dashin is the additional coal to be chayv for each shevet. Mamela, there was no extra coal for his drasha, meaning this din that Rabbi Yehuda learned from the extra coal, the Hayra, the erroneous psak, Tluya Bezdin, and the Maisa, Ha'isa, that was done by Shegig, is Tolvikola, has to be done by the Kol. Manalu, from where does he learn it out? Because we don't have the extra Kol. Because by Shigas Havidazar Shal Tzibur, it says Vahaya Ime Ine Nesalish Gaga. From this that it says Nesa Beloshan Nifal, meaning that others caused it, meaning Bezdin, who it means that Bezdin, who gave a erroneous psak, caused the call that they should make a Iser based on that psak. That's where we learn it out from. So that means that the Kol did the Aveda, the Maisa Aveda, and the Psak, even though the Psak was done only by Bezdin, but the Maisa of the Aveda, meaning Psak was done from that Pasik by the erroneous Psak by a Bezdin, but the actual Maisa was done by the Kohol. From the word Nessa, that means that the Bezdin caused others to sin. Rabbi Ahmad, the Maki is from here. It says, L'chol ha'amish gaga. So the Pasuk teaches that you don't bring a kapish gaga only kishakola, meaning when everybody was mishtatev in the Aveda, meaning Bezdin through its psak and the kol through doing a Maisa Aveda based on the psak of kol of the Bezdin. We need Saya Abaya's pasuk and Saya of his pasuk. Because Achman, if the Torah would have only written Abaya pasuk, I would have said even if it's a meat of the cold that's sin, a chayiv b'korban, because me eina means even a meal. To teach us only when it's rubei kikulei, meaning kol. Even only if it's reiva. Because l'chol ha'mishgag, based in b'hadei ruba. If it's in l'chol ha'mishgag, I would have thought that the chiyuv ha'mishgag is only till Bezdin also does the Maaseh Isa together with the Rev Yisrael. That's why which is mashma meloshen nifa, that Bezdin gave the psak and caused others to do the aveda, but they themselves didn't. These two psukim is ba'avedas kechamudich is only written by Avodah Zarah. That, but where there talks about apalo elan asar lechatas, but not by a tzibur shechata b'shar avedas that they bring up halam dava. How do we know? How do we know to learn out these dinim apply even by par halam dava shal tzibur? Tamad leim yalfidim einay meinay. Agzei shavah by the einay that says by tzibur shechata b'Avodah Zarah. And it says v'hayi beina hayda nasnal ishgaga to the meina, which is written by a tzibur shachat by other avedas v'nalam dav meina kol. So the Ksei Shabbos says that the dinim par halam dav shel tzibur are equal to the dinim of kav ma'avodah zarah shel tzibur. We learned haydu bezin shel echad, if one of the shvatim that shevet sinned, so that shevet is chayiv, and the rest of the Shvatim are potter. So the Gemara asks a Shaila, Ibailahu Sheidat Echad Rabbi Yehuda Heidas Bezdin Gadol that sinned according to the Sanhedrin Hagdoila that was in Yerushalayim. Mimas Shvatim. In that case, do the other Shvatim have to bring a par? Every Shevet have to bring a par Eloi, because now we're not talking about that Shevet, the Bezdin Gadol of that Shevet. We're talking about the Sanhedrin Hagdoila. Gave a psak, and one shevet followed suit. To all the other shvatim who didn't sin, would they have to bring a carbon? Do we say only b'meshiva shvatim shechatu hu d'ma'is shvat ma'adayim? Do we say only if it's a majority of the shvatim that the rest of the shvatim bring? Mishum d'beis mikei kerubi, because in that case there's a reiv. Avachat shevet like keruba, but one shevet with it isn't the reiv of Yisol that's in Loi, so the rest of the Shvatim will not bring a par. Or perhaps there's no difference how many Shvatim, even if it's one Shevet that's in, but it's Alpi Heidas Bezdin Gadol, every Shevet has to bring a par Halam Hadava. Tashma, come in here and I'll bring your ayah. Mahim Aviyim. What do they bring for Halam Dava Shal Tzibur? Par Echad. Reb Shimon Shnei Parim. Reb Shimon says two Parim. Like, what's the case talking about? Shiva, If we're going to say it's talking about that 7 Shvatim sin, Rab Shimon, who says Shnei Parim, Tmanya Bayi, he should have had 8 because each one for each Shevet, if you're talking about 7 Shvatim, and an additional one for the Bezdin. Why do you say 2 Parim? Because we're talking about only one Shevet sin. So you see, the other Shvatim do not bring. In fact, you want to be my Hiras Eisa Bezdin. This Shevet sin, what are we talking about? If we're talking about the Hiras Bezdin of that Shevet, Rab Shimon Leslie, Rab Shimon doesn't hold that you bring a par for the Bezdin of that Shevet. He's like a Yachid. Elalav, only for sure, it's talking about Hiras Bezdin HaGadol, Shemin Yerushalayim. We're talking about, it was based on the Psak Din of the Bezdin HaGadol in Yerushalayim. Something. What with Tanakama who says only one par? Who is that Tanakama that says par echad? Maybe we're going to say Rabmeya. Haruba Bayi. Rabmeya says requires that most of the shvatim should be sinning according to the Bezdin HaGadol in order to be chayv par halam dava. Over here it's talking about one shevet that did according to the psak of the Bezdin HaGadol. Rabmeya says you're not chayv. Elalav only Zaraya. The Tanakama is Rabbi Yehuda. Is Rabbi Yehuda that and one shevet which is mechayv par even if one shevet sins. So you see in the Braisa according to Rabbi Yehuda when one shevet sins, based on the Sanhedrin Agdela, that shevet alone brings the carbon. The rest of the shvatim do not. The Gemara is no raya. Amri the Bnei Yeshiva slugs up this raya, and they say Hachmai skin over here. The Braisa is talking about shisha shvatim heim ruben shal hakol. That 6 Shvatim had sinned, and they are the majority of the Klal Yisrael. And the das of the Tanakama, B'shittas Rabbi Shimon Lazahi. The das of the Tanakama is the Shita of Rabbi Shimon Laza. The Tanya that we learned in another Braisa earlier on Amar Aleph, Rabbi Shimon Laza, Imam Ishmai. Shimon Laza says in the name of Rabbi Meir, Chatu Shiva Shisha, V'hein Rabbi Shakol, if 6 Shvatim sin, and they are the majority of the call, or Im Chatu Shiva, or 7 Shvatim, which is the Rev of the Shvatim, even though they're not the Rev of the Kol. Avim par halam dava, one par halam dava. So you have no proof. Because we're not talking about one shevet, we're talking about either 7 Shvatim or 6 Shvatim, which is the Rev of the Kol. And and not one shevet, so you have no raya. Says you want to touch I'll bring a raya from here. Shevet she'asa avedis by those beis dinai. One shevet that did based on the psak of Bezdin. Ois ha-shevet chayev. That shevet is chayev to bring a halam davar shel tzibur. Shar kol ha-shvatim turim. The rest of the shvatim, the remaining shvatim who didn't sin, are potter from bringing a carbon. Oh, but if they did the Aveda based on the Sanhedrin Agdela of Yerushalayim, that's that Naharabais, even the rest of the Shvatim will be, even those that didn't sin will be mechuyev to bring a par. Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, all the other Shvatim are fashlept after that one shevet that sinned. Shmami so we have a conclusion from the Braisa that Rabbi Yehuda says that even when one shevet sins, based on the Sanhedrin Agdela that was in Yerushalayim, that was by the Harabais, by the Lish Gazis, every shevet that fashlet has to also bring a par. Avashi said, Masnis Lamedeka. We can also bring a raya and be medak from our Mishnah. We can conclude. The Ketani we learned in the Mishnah. It says, if a bezdin of one of the shvatim paskin wrongly, erroneously, and that shevet followed, only that shevet is going to be chayev, but the rest of the shvatim are going to be potter. So the Gemara explains, why did we have to learn the Tana learn that the rest of shvatim are potter? Tana is shevet chayev. You learn the finish, only that shevet is chayev. Even the Tana oisai shevet chayev, since she said this oisai. That shevet is chayiv, and Mela Yadan Shashvat Miturim. Automatically, I know the rest of the Shvat Mapata. Elah HaKabashma. Only this is what the Mishnah is coming to teach us. The Beraz Beis Dinoi, who the Shashvat Miturim. Only if it's they followed the Hira of their Bezdin, the Shevet's Bezdin. Al Hira's Bezdin HaGadol, but if it was based, if they did the Aveda based on the Sanhedrin HaGadol that was by the Lish HaGazis, there's 71 Dayanim, Afil Shashvatim Chayavim. Even all the other Shvatim will be Fashlep. Shmamina, so we have a right in the Mishnah, according to Rabbi Yehuda, even if one Shevet sins based on the Sanhedrin HaGadol, the rest of the Shvatim will also have to be a Par Helm Shadava. Ibailahu, the Gemara effect Hashaya, Shevet, Erch Yasva Hiraz Bezdin HaGadol Eluyab Shimon, who says that every Shevet is called a cow. Me, myself, though that Shevet being a par or Eloi. One Shevet that followed the Psak of Bezdin HaGadol. According to Rabbi Shimon, it says every Shevet is called Kol. Does that Shevet bring a par or not? Does Rabbi Shimon say one Shevet is called Kol only when you have majority of the Shvatim or majority of the Kol? But if not, they're considered maybe as Yechidim and they don't have to bring. Or one Shevet is called Kol and therefore they are Chayiv. Tashma, coming here on the line to you. Mahim Aviyan. What did they bring as a common seabird? It says Par Echad. That's what the Tanakhama says. Rav Shimon Parim. Rav Shimon says 2 Parim. My asking, in what case is it talking about? Elam, if you're going to say Shechatu Shiva, that 7 Shvatim had sinned, so in fact, the Shaila, Shnei Parim, according to Rav Shimon, it's only 2 Parim. Shnei Parim Bai. Because according to Rav Shimon, if 7 Shvatim sin, each Shevet brings a par, and an additional one Bezdin brings. Only we have to say it's talking about one Shevet sin. And according to Rabbi Shimon, that Shevet brings a par echad, and Bezdin brings an additional par. Which Bezdin are we talking about that this Shevet do the Aveda? If you're going to say, Veda's Bezdin, the Bezdin of each Shevet, Rabbi Shimon last later, Rabbi Shimon holds if it's their Shevet, they don't have to bring up a Helm Dava. They bring as a Yachid. Ella, for sure, it's talking about Behiraz, Bezdin HaGadol, Shemir Yishalayim. We're talking about the Sanhedrin HaGdoila of the 71 Dayanim. And according to Rabbi Shimon, Shevet Echad that followed the Behiraz, Bezdin HaGadol, is Chayiv to bring up a Helm Dava. When Tizmira says, is it reasonable to say that the Brais is talking about one Shevet sin? If so, Tanakama and Mani. Who is the Tanakama following that says one par? Rab Meir follows Rab Meir Harubabai. Rab Meir requires that most of the Shvatim have to sin in order to be Chayv a par. And here we said only one Shevet. Rab Yehuda, if you can say it's Rab Yehuda, Shah Shvatim Nami Maiso. So all the other Shvatim that didn't sin also have to bring a par, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, all the rest of the Shvatim, Fashlatim Zechef, are the ones that sin. So even when it's one Shevet that sinned, all the other Shvatim would have to bring a par. Al-Hamani, who is this Tana? Reb Shimon Lazi. It's Reb Shimon Lazi. It's talking about either 6 Shvatim and they're the majority of the call, or 7 Shvatim who are the majority of the Shvatim but are not Rev of the call. U Kidetanya. And like we learned earlier in the Brais, Reb Shimon Allah says Mechayiv 1 par. And Reb Shimon holds that in such a case, that you bring 2 parim, 1 for the kol, 1 for the bezdin. But since we're not talking about a case of one shevet that sinned, so you can't bring a raya from here, according to Reb Shimon, that if one shevet that had sinned by Raz Bezdin HaGadol, we can bring a raya if they bring a par, because here we're talking about either Reiv Shvatim or Reiv Kol. Tashma says, you're going to come here, I'll bring a raya from our Mishnah. It says, Chachamim argue on Rabbi Yehuda, even they say by one shevet that sinned, they say that if it's their own bezdin, they're not going to be chayv par helam. Only if it was based on the Sanhedrin HaGdoila. Who are the Chachamim that are mentioned in our Mishnah that argue on Rabbi Yehuda? It says, if you're going to say Rabbi Meir, Ruba Baya, according to Rabbi Meir, you don't bring a par unless most of the Shvatim had sin. And here it's talking about one shevet. Rather, it's footage that Rab Shimon, who says even one shevet based that the sin based on the Sanhedrin Agdoila is considered as a kol, and they bring a par. Shema Minah, so we can learn out from our Mishnah that Rab Shimon holds even one shevet that sin based on the Sanhedrin Agdoila, I'm mechuyev to bring a par helam shel davar shel tzibur. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, shevet achad iki kol v'nolahu. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, how do they know that one shevet is called a kol? Amri, so the Bnei Yeshiva said, it says, when the Bnei Yisrael gathered in the Beis HaMikdash Shadam for the Yeshua Hashem against the Bnei Amoin, it says, Vayamid Yehishafet. Yehishafet, the king of Yehuda, got up, and it says, B'kahal Yehuda, it uses the Lashon Kahal for one shevet for Yehuda. So this pasuk calls one shevet Kahal. So from this we learn out, Kol is even, one shevet is called Kol. What does it mean? Lefnei achatza chadasha. My pirush achatza chadasha. Why is it called chadasha? Rabbi Yochanan Shabbai say yain that day chitshu dvarim. They were mechadish in the basement of Rabbi Yeshafet. Ve'amenu and the chachams were mesakin that full yain. One who was tameh and he had full yain, he has to wait for harav shemesh. Al yikanos machal leviyah cannot even enter in the machal leviyah, which was behar abayis. So the pasuk calls achatz chadasha because there was a new level of Tara that was brought to them that day. But b'per mamish, you see that Yehuda, it says kahal by one shevet of Yehuda. Matzah Rav Yaakov, there's the shaila. From where do you bring a right that one shevet is called kol? Dilma shani. Yerushalayim Davinam Binyamin, you bring a right from Yerushalayim, maybe Yerushalayim there. You had also Shevet Binyamin that lived there. So when it says Shekahal Yehuda Yerushalayim, the Kol Shel Yehuda is not only Shel Yehuda, it was of Binyamin too. So maybe only two Shvatim are called Kal. Alam Rabach, Rabbi Yaakov, the Makkah is from here. It says that Yaakov said to Yosef, Kel Shaka near Alai Beluz Beretz Canaan. Vayivarach Haisi. Vayim Allah Hidin Mafechavi Ki Bihibi Sichon Usaticha Lekalamim. In the time when it was said to Yaakov, this Nevuah, he already had 10 children. Man Isilu Hayishaita, who will be born in the future that time? Binyamin, who is the youngest of the Shvatim. Shmaminah, Hikamer Achmana. Meaning, now you're going to have another kol, which is Binyamin. So you see, one shevet is called kol. How could you prove from there that one shevet is called kol? Perhaps this is what the Eibishter was saying to Yaakov. The Binyamin, who the Havishneim Asa Shvat, the Mizkari is kol. When you Binyamin will be born, then you'll have 12 Shvatim, and then it will be called kol. According to this Piddish, only after 12 Shvatim are called kol, but not one shevet. I'm late. I've kind of said to Rav Shaba, Ella, according to this Piddish, Shnei Asa Shvatim Eiku kol, Achad Asa Shvatim, Achad Asa Shvatim, the 11 Shvatim before Binyamin was born, Lo Yikah kol, is not called kol. But from the pasuk it says, Vayamid Yishav B'kal Yehuda Yerushalayim, meaning Yehuda and Binyamin are called a kol. If 2 are called a kol, for sure 11 are called a kol. So surely the pasuk was referring when the Eibishter was maftich leYaakov that he's going to have another kol is going to be born to him, which he was referring to Binyamin, is araya that even one shevet like Binyamin is going to be born is called kol.